Hollywood has always promised spectacle fireballs blooming across city streets, heroes leaping through impossible danger, and stunt work so seamless it feels like sorcery. But what the studios never mention is the invisible cost behind those moments. The broken bodies, the silenced witnesses, the tragedies wrapped in legal tape and buried beneath layers of carefully orchestrated silence. Because sometimes the thrill on screen is born from a nightmare off camera. Sometimes the illusion of danger isn't an illusion at all. Across some of the biggest action films in history, performers were crushed, burned, thrown, and struck down in accidents that should have stopped productions cold. Instead, cameras kept rolling. Lawyers arrived before journalists could blink. Settlements were drafted quietly in back rooms. And the stories of those who suffered were sealed away behind non-disclosure agreements never meant for public ears. Hollywood thrives on risk, but it fears accountability. So when disaster strikes, the industry's instinct is not transparency, it's containment. In this episode, we pull aside the velvet curtain to reveal what never made the headlines, the real injuries hidden beneath billion-dollar franchises, the lives altered in seconds, and the secret studios worked relentlessly to keep out of sight. These aren't rumors. These aren't myths. These are the scars left behind by movies audiences celebrated without ever knowing the cost. This is the concealed history of action cinema, the part the spotlight never touches. And tonight, we illuminate it. Fact 1, The Expendables 3, when a safe weapon wasn't safe at all. The production of The Expendables 3 was built on veteran bravado, seasoned action stars surrounded by controlled chaos. Yet in one chaotic shootout sequence, the controls slipped. A prop gun, cleared and declared harmless, fired a projectile with enough force to punch through the vest of a background actor. He dropped instantly, shocking the crew. But the panic that followed wasn't the kind you'd expect. Instead of rushing to gather statements or pause production, the first calls went straight to the studio's legal team. Phones buzzed, managers whispered. The scene was locked down more for narrative control than safety. The actor survived, though the pain and trauma were real, but his story was quickly folded into a non-disclosure agreement so strict that his name vanished from set chatter within hours. The incident became a ghost, acknowledged only by those on set who watched it happen, then forced to pretend it hadn't. The movie went on to promote its authentic action. No one mentioned that authenticity almost cost someone their life. Fact 2, Transformers: Dark of the Moon, the cable that changed everything. On the massive set of Transformers: Dark of the Moon, the stunts were engineered to feel overwhelming, metal collapsing vehicles, flipping humans, dodging destruction. But during one high-pressure setup, a steel cable snapped loose with terrifying force. It whipped forward like a blade, slicing through the windshield of a stunt vehicle and striking the young stunt performer behind the wheel. In an instant, her life changed. Bones shattered. Her spine suffered irreversible damage. And as she was rushed to the hospital, the set fell into a stunned, horrified silence. But that silence didn't last. Within hours, Paramount's legal representatives arrived. Production paused not to examine what went wrong, but to control the fallout. The family was contacted, and meetings were arranged before the press caught wind of the disaster. A settlement was reached behind closed doors, sealed with an NDA that ensured no one involved could ever publicly speak about the real cause of the accident. The film later crossed the billion-dollar mark. Her career and the future she had envisioned never recovered. Fact 3, XX, the motorcycle jump that became memorial. The first XX movie marketed itself as extreme, raw adrenaline gravity, defying stunts, and an edge that set it apart from other action films of the era. But the movie's most dangerous moment never reached audiences. Vin Diesel's longtime stunt double known for flawless precision on a motorcycle, attempted a high-risk bridge jump designed to be one of the film's standout sequences. Everything was calculated speed, angle, timing, but one unpredictable moment, whether mechanical failure, wind, or a fraction of human error, sent him spiraling off course. He collided with the structure at catastrophic force, dying instantly. The crew, many of whom had worked with him for years, stood frozen as the reality set in. Yet in the aftermath, the narrative was swiftly redirected. The studio declared it an unfortunate stunt accident and resumed production after a brief halt. No charges. No long investigation. Just a dedication in the credits that most viewers never noticed. His death became a shadow tucked behind a box office success, a reminder that some stunts don't end with applause, but with silence. Fact 4. The Dark Knight, a chase sequence that turned fatal. On the set of The Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan insisted on realism, real vehicles, real speed, real danger. During the filming of one of the movie's most ambitious chase sequences, a stunt truck roared through an industrial zone, while a supporting camera vehicle attempted to reposition itself. In a split second, the timing faltered. A stunt car clipped the edge of a camera truck, sending it careening off course. A special effects technician standing nearby was struck with devastating force. He died before help could arrive. The tragedy rippled through the set. Nolan was reportedly devastated, pausing production in shock. But before long, the machine powering a major blockbuster shifted into its usual rhythm. Warner Bros. Took the lead, steering the language, shaping the narrative, and ensuring the official investigation reached its conclusion with startling speed. It was ruled a workplace accident. No negligence. No criminal liability. No names released. One of the most celebrated films of the century moved forward, carrying with it a loss the public never truly saw. Fact 5. Deadpool 2, a first day that never became a second. On Deadpool 2, a talented stuntwoman arrived for her first major film job, doubling for Domino. The task seemed straightforward: ride a motorcycle down a street and stop on a precise mark. But schedules were tight, retakes grew frequent, and the pressure built. During one run, the bike surged forward faster than intended. She lost control, hit a curb, and crashed into a building's glass facade. The impact was fatal. Crew members were shaken, some in tears, but the shock on set was quickly overshadowed by a different kind of urgency: the arrival of the studio's legal team. Statements were shaped, protocols emphasized, and the narrative began to shift. The public explanation stressed that she wasn't wearing a helmet because the character didn't wear one, subtly deflecting responsibility. Inside the stunt community, anger simmered. Inside the studio walls, the incident was packaged as another tragic but unavoidable accident. No charges were filed, and another life was folded into Hollywood's long history of silence. BNMUNTIVTTP Fact 6H. Fact 6. Mission Impossible, when realism crossed the line. Tom Cruise has built his legacy on doing the impossible, performing stunts himself, pushing boundaries and demanding authenticity in every frame. But during the rooftop chase sequence for Mission Impossible Fallout, that authenticity exacted a painful price. Cruise leapt from one building to another, misjudged the distance by inches, and slammed his foot against the wall. The bones snapped audibly. Yet, with sheer determination, he pulled himself up and finished the shot before collapsing. Production halted for weeks, costing the studio millions. Behind closed doors, conversations simmered. Was the stunt too dangerous? Did Cruise ignore warnings? Should stricter limits have been enforced? But those questions never left the room. Because Cruise wasn't just the star, he was the producer. And accountability becomes complicated when the injured party is also the one in charge. Instead of hiding the moment, the studio used the actual footage of Cruise breaking his ankle in marketing materials, spinning real pain into promotional gold. Hollywood didn't take responsibility. Hollywood cashed in. Fact 7: Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, a wire pull that ended a future. The Harry Potter franchise had grown into a global phenomenon, and its stunt team bore the weight of delivering magic that felt real. Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double, young, skilled, and dedicated, had been with the production for years. But during a wire pull stunt meant to simulate a violent magical blast, everything went terribly wrong. He was yanked backward at high speed, but instead of landing on the padded area prepared for the fall, he slammed into a solid wall with crushing force. Crew members described the sound heavy, final, unmistakable. He survived, but the damage to his spine was permanent. Paralysis ended not only his career, but an entire future he'd spent years building. Within hours, Warner Bros. Launched an internal investigation, but it was confined and carefully managed. The public explanation was vague: a tragic accident. Behind the scenes, the studio ensured financial arrangements were in place, along with non-disclosure agreements that kept the circumstances sealed. A young man lost his mobility. Hollywood lost nothing. Fact 8: Troy, when art imitated injury. On the set of Troy, Brad Pitt trained relentlessly to embody Achilles' powerful, swift, almost superhuman. But real bodies aren't mythic, and the production's grueling schedule demanded take after take of high-intensity sprinting. During one run, a sharp pain tore through his leg. He collapsed, unable to stand. The diagnosis felt like a cruel joke. A torn Achilles tendon, Achilles injured at his own Achilles. The irony wasn't lost on the crew, but it quickly gave way to panic. Production halted. Insurance companies examined the situation. Meetings stretched late into the night. Was he pushed too hard? Should the stunt have been altered? Those questions circulated, but only internally. Public statements softened the truth, downplaying the injury as a minor setback. But behind closed doors, Pitt's career hung in the balance, and the film's schedule threatened to unravel. Hollywood thrives on symbolism, except when it reveals too much truth. Fact 9: The Crow, a scene that should have been impossible. The death of Brandon Lee on the set of The Crow remains one of Hollywood's most haunting tragedies. During a scene involving a handgun, a fragment of a real bullet left in the barrel, due to sloppy prop handling, was fired by a blank round with deadly force. Lee collapsed, and at first some believed he was still acting. But as blood spread, panic erupted. Crew members shouted for medics. The reality was undeniable. A fatal shot had occurred on set. The investigation that followed should have been exhaustive. Instead, it was muddled, hurried, and filled with conflicting accounts. Various departments pointed fingers. Budget, scheduling pressure, and rushed prop preparation all played roles, yet responsibility dissolved into ambiguity. The official ruling: accidental death. No charges. No bans. No accountability. Hollywood moved forward. Another legend was born not from the film itself, but from the life cut short behind it. Fact 10: Hangover part, comedy scene that turned into a tragedy. Behind the chaotic humor of the Hangover part, I was a stunt designed to look fast, messy, but ultimately harmless. A vehicle speeding through Bangkok's narrow streets before screeching to a dramatic stop. But on one take, that stop never happened. The stunt car hit a corner at the wrong angle, and the performer inside was thrown headfirst into a metal pole with horrific force. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, slipping into a coma. When he finally woke, part of his skull had been removed to relieve swelling, and the cognitive damage was permanent. Warner Bros. Handled the situation with quiet urgency. Public statements minimized details, calling it an unexpected mishap, a phrase that neatly erased the severity. Behind the scenes, lawyers worked to negotiate a settlement and contain public scrutiny. The film went on to entertain millions. But the man whose work helped make it possible never fully regained the life he once had. Fact 11, Rambo First Blood Part, i.e. the near-fatal secret above the tree. Explosions, jungle warfare, and close encounters define Rambo First Blood Part, II. But one of its most dangerous moments wasn't scripted, it happened in the air. Sylvester Stallone was attached to a harness beneath a helicopter for a dramatic mid-air sequence. As the aircraft dipped lower than expected, the spinning blades came terrifyingly close to his head. Crew members shouted warnings, and the pilot pulled up just in time. It was a matter of seconds that separated Stallone from a fatal accident. But the incident didn't become a headline. It didn't prompt an inquiry. Instead, it disappeared into whispers exchanged privately among those who witnessed it. For years, the near miss remained an almost mythical secret, only later confirmed by crew members who could no longer ignore the truth Stallone had nearly been killed filming his own franchise. Hollywood didn't address it. Hollywood simply moved on. Fact 12, The Maze Runner, when the lead actor became the victim. During the filming of The Maze Runner, the death-cured Dylan O'Brien was performing a fast-paced stunt involving a moving vehicle, a sequence meant to look chaotic but safely choreographed. But a small misalignment in timing unraveled everything. O'Brien was struck with enormous force, dragged along the pavement, and thrown violently to the ground. The impact shattered bones and left him with serious facial and neurological injuries. Production halted, though early studio statements tried to soften the extent of what had happened. Recovering took months. Emotionally, it took even longer. O'Brien later admitted he feared he might not return to acting. Trauma had carved itself deeply into him. Behind closed doors, discussions circulated about whether the stunt should have been redesigned, timed differently, or postponed altogether. But those questions never found their way outside the studio walls. Once again, the schedule had spoken louder than safety. Fact 13, Quantum of Solace, a Bond stunt that nearly ended in silence. The James Bond franchise is built on precision, sleek cars, razor-sharp choreography, and stunt driving executed at the highest level. But during Quantum of Solace, even the most experienced hands couldn't outrun disaster. While rehearsing a high-speed chase near Lake Garda, an Aston Martin, driven by a seasoned stunt professional, hit a slick patch on the mountain road. In a heartbeat, the vehicle veered off course, broke through a barrier, and tumbled violently down a steep embankment. The car twisted, crushed, and flipped until it finally landed upside down near the water. Crew members scrambled down the cliffside expecting to find a fatality. Somehow, the driver was alive, but his injuries were severe. He was airlifted away from the set while shaken cast and crew watched stunned at how close they had come to tragedy. MGM acted quickly, reducing the incident to a carefully worded, unfortunate event. Internal murmurs later revealed that the route had been flagged as risky, but the schedule and the image of Bond-level spectacle took precedence. The film went on to dazzle audiences with its action sequences. Few knew that one of them nearly cost a man his life. Fact 14, The Avengers, a pyro misfire hidden behind superhero glamour. On The Avengers, the chaos audiences saw battles, explosions, bodies hurled across the screen, was crafted by dozens of stunt professionals whose names never appear above the title. But one mid-air stunt turned terrifying in a split second. A stunt woman was rigged to perform a powerful yank backward, mimicking an alien attack. The cable was connected to a pyrotechnic charge meant to give a controlled jolt. Instead, it detonated with an explosion far more powerful than intended. The blast tore across her face and body, burning and splitting her skin. Crew members froze. Some thought a prop had malfunctioned, others assumed the pyro timing was off. Chaos followed, medics rushing and alarms sounding, yet within hours, Marvel's team was already shaping the narrative. The official explanation: equipment malfunction. No further details. No accountability. Not even her name was released. Production paused briefly, then resumed at full pace. The stunt woman went into surgery after surgery, her career uncertain. But the giant machinery of the MCU didn't slow for long, not even for a life altered forever. Fact 15, Now You See Me, when a magic trick became a real fight for air. The water tank escape scene in Now You See Me was designed to be intense chains locks and a shrinking window of time. But for Isla Fisher, the danger became terrifyingly real when her release mechanism jammed mid-take. She struggled underwater, trapped, unable to signal effectively. The crew watched through the glass, praising her convincing performance, unaware she was truly drowning. Her movements were so authentic because they were authentic. She was fighting for her life. Seconds stretched. Air dwindled. With one final burst of panic-fueled strength, Fisher managed to wriggle enough to reach the surface. Only then did the crew realize something had gone wrong. In interviews, the story was softened into a humorous close call, but the truth was far darker. Had she panicked just a moment sooner or a moment later, the scene would have ended not with applause, but with tragedy. Even magic, it seems, can become deadly when safety is mistaken for storytelling. Bonus fact, the accidents Hollywood paid to erase. For every stunt disaster the public knows about, there are countless others that never make it past the studio gates. Injuries that appear only in confidential reports. Falls, burns, impacts, and malfunctions buried under legal language and financial settlements. These are the stories that exist only in whispers because Hollywood bought their silence. On some productions, a performer's fall from a malfunctioning rig is rewritten as fatigue. A pyrotechnic misfire is labeled unexpected debris. A harness snap becomes a momentary lapse. And almost immediately, a familiar pattern unfolds. Lawyers arrive before journalists, safety officers vanish behind closed doors, and paperwork starts to bend the truth into something that looks clean, manageable, and free of blame. Stunt performers describe the aftermath in hauntingly similar ways. A sudden decrease in call sheets, fewer opportunities, then no opportunities at all. Their injury and the liability it represents quietly pushes them out of the industry without a single conversation. They don't get a farewell, a statement, or even acknowledgement. They simply disappear. There are sets whispered about among stunt professionals' productions where corners were cut, where warnings were ignored, where budgets and schedules overruled basic safety. But these stories rarely surface because leaking them risks careers, reputations, and livelihoods. And so the public sees only the spectacle, the explosions, the crashes, the impossible feats. They never see the real price paid by the people behind the scenes, the ones whose suffering was absorbed into non-disclosure agreements so airtight that even the memory of the event becomes taboo. The darkest truth is this: the accidents you've heard about are only the ones Hollywood failed to bury. Hollywood crafts illusions grand, spectacular, and unforgettable. But behind every fiery explosion and every breathtaking stunt lies a reality the industry works hard to keep hidden. Real people were injured. Real careers were shattered. Real lives were changed forever. If you believe their stories deserve to be seen, if you think the truth shouldn't be locked away behind non-disclosure agreements, then let your voice be part of the conversation. Like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and help shine a light on the shadows Hollywood hopes you'll ignore. And if you want more untold stories, more secrets buried behind the glamour, Make sure to subscribe to Behind the Velvet Curtain. There is still so much more they never wanted you to know.